On today's Newsmakers, a California school district is fighting a legal battle to defend opening prayer. We're joined by Joel Oster, an attorney for Advocates for Faith and Freedom. He's going to break down why the Chino Valley Unified School District is fighting back and challenging an injunction preventing them from opening with prayer. With no further ado, here is Joel.
Well, there's a lot going on in Chino Valley Unified School District out in California. There has been decisive legal action taken to challenge what is being called an outdated injunction. This injunction does not allow school board meetings to open with prayer. Can you tell us a little bit about how this all came to be?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. About 10 years ago, a lawsuit was filed against the Chino Valley, claiming that their practice of opening up a school board meeting with prayer violated the Establishment Clause, and the Ninth Circuit agreed and entered an injunction, and they based that injunction on what is called the Lemon Test. Well, if you are familiar with lemon law being you bought a cranker of a car, junk of a car, well, the lemon test has proved to be just as junky in the field of law. And so the Supreme Court has now overturned the lemon test and said it's not good law. It doesn't respect how the Establishment Clause should be enforced, should be interpreted. So the Supreme Court in the Kennedy v. Bremerton School District case struck down the lemon test. And so we are now going back to court and saying, hey, look, this injunction was based upon the now defunct lemon test and it should be cast aside.
So, and this is interesting because obviously prayer in schools, this has been something I've been so intrigued looking at some of the statistics because recent polling found that the majority of Americans, 52% of Americans actually support, and this blew my mind, having teacher-led prayers that include Jesus's name. That was 52%, and 57% said that they were fine with teachers generally mentioning God in leading prayer in schools. And so now nationally, it's interesting to see that support. There's a lot sort of happening spiritually in America right now, but legally speaking, let's come back to that. When it comes to prayer, is it okay to open school board prayers, legally speaking, from your perspective, to school board meetings rather, with prayer?
Well, we all know that prayer has been in the public schools as long as there's been final examinations. Everyone has to say a prayer depending upon how much they studied for that final examination. But come to the legality of prayer before school board meetings, that is something that's been going on in our nation's history since before the Constitution was even drafted. And so prayer has been used to start deliberative bodies for centuries. I mean, there's been a congressional prayer, for as long as there's been a Congress. And the thought is there's a couple of thoughts here. One thought is we are a religious people. We are made up of various different religious, factions, different faiths. And so because America is made up of a lot of different religious beliefs and traditions, it's not possible to just tell people who are religious, you're not welcome in society. And so there is a little bit of accommodation that has to go for religious practices. And the other thought is that whenever you do open up a deliberative session with prayer, it just helps to bring solemnity. It helps to bring wisdom to an event. It helps to focus people on the task at hand. And so for that reason, the Supreme Court has said that prayers are allowed. They are constitutional to open up deliberative body sessions.
Yeah, it's interesting because people try to act like school boards are different from other, there was the Greece versus Galloway case too. I grew up near Greece, so I had paid close attention to that. It's interesting. They'll try to say, well, the school board is different, right? Because it involves children. And it's like, well, it's adults meeting, and there may be kids there, but they're meeting to discuss issues that happen within a school, within a town and a city community. So it's not really that different. It's a government board still. Is there any legitimate reason to be concerned that there's some sort of compelled audience, at these school board meetings that would separate them somehow from other government meetings where Congress opens with prayer, where this has always happened?
Yeah, well, Greece was my case. I argued that before the district court there in the Western District of New York, and then also before the Second Circuit. And I was on the litigation team that presented those arguments to the U.S. Supreme Court. And even with town board meetings, you have the entire town there. Young children are there. School-aged children are there, much like you would have at a school board meeting. So there really is no difference between a school board meeting and then a town board meeting or Congress. The the fact is, America is made up of various different religious faiths, and we are religious people, and prayer has been used to help bring solemnity to the occasion, and the Supreme Court has held that it is constitutional. So no, it really is nothing unique about school board meetings that sets it apart from other deliberative bodies.
Yeah, and so I appreciate you clarifying that, because that makes sense, right? In a town, you're going to have people of all ages, just like you will at a school board meeting. One of the things that often happens when prayer for anybody, you say, okay, look, we're going to open it up. Anybody of any faith tradition can come and pray. You'll start to get the Satanists who aren't really Satanists. They don't even believe in Satan. They're non-theological Satanists. You'll get the atheists. They will say, well, we get to pray too. And they'll show up and they'll utter their prayers. Is there an argument to be made that because those are more political statements than they are theological statements, that those shouldn't be welcome when we're opening up legitimate prayer? I'm curious your thoughts on that. I know it gets tricky legally, but it is an interesting dynamic that unfolds.
Yeah, no, the school, the governmental body is not going to go down that road, nor does it need it to go down that road. In the Greece case that you mentioned, and actually an atheist asked, can I give the opening invocation? And the town of Greece says, yes, you can. And that statement made it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And Justice Alito even asked a question, and Scalia asked a question about that. And yeah, so clearly the prayer opportunity cannot be abused to proselytize, advance any one faith. But that's not what is going on here, nor is that typically what goes on. Is sometimes the prayers are predominantly of one faith because the demographics of the town are predominantly of one faith. So it makes sense that the vast majority of prayers would be aligned with that that religious faith. But there's, in Marsh v. Chambers, which is the landmark U.S. Supreme Court case on prayer, Congress hired Reverend Palmer to give just one person, so obviously he's of one faith, to give the prayers, and I believe it was a paid position. And so, clearly the school, the governmental entity cannot abuse the opportunity, but that's not what is going on here.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. You brought up a great point, though, because if the school district is saying to everyone, you're all welcome of any faith, you are welcome here, and only one or two faiths are ever applying to do it, right, to show up and pray, then that is what it is. It's not that the school district set it up that way. It's that other people are not stepping forward and saying that they want to do it. And that may just be a demographic issue. Now, in the case of Chino Valley Unified School District, it's interesting because a lot of school districts and a lot of towns, and you've probably seen this, I'm sure you have, they give up in these cases. They don't challenge them because they don't want to deal with legal fees or issues or the drama of it. They've chosen to continue fighting this. What drives that?
Yeah, a lot of school boards do cower out. You hate to say it. And the reason why is because the plaintiffs in those other cases act like bullies. They say, hey, look, we're going to threaten you with a lawsuit. You're going to pay us millions of dollars of fees. We might find a favorable judge. And so the school board is put in the position, or the town is put in the position of allowing the prayer practice and maybe getting a judge that does not see the Constitution the way that others would see the Constitution. And now they're going to face quite a hefty lawyer's fee at the end of the day. Or they just cave in and do what the plaintiffs are demanding that they do and give up their constitutional rights. And so you got to applaud the town, the governmental entity that stands up for what the Constitution actually does allow for.
Now, Chino Valley currently cannot open with prayer at this moment, which is why you are filing this legal challenge. What would happen if Chino Valley said tomorrow, well, we're going to do it anyway, and they had prayer? What would happen?
Obviously, that's not the route that they are going. There is an injunction, and we do have law and order in this country. So the proper way to go about this is to ask the court, can we get some relief from this injunction?
Yeah, no, and that's the right way to go about it. I'm just always curious, and I think it's helpful for people to see that this is something that they have to go through this legal process because they've been told with this injunction that they cannot open with prayer, and they've decided to fight this battle. And as you were saying, a lot of other localities, they don't do it because they don't want to deal with the cost and all of that. But it's amazing to see people stand up and say, no, we're going to fight this and we want to win. At the end of the day, what do you expect will happen as a result of this legal filing?
The limit test has been thrown out, and there's a reason why this case ended up the way it was because the lemon test was unworkable and ended up with decisions that just simply did not make sense when someone understands the history and rationale on why we even have the Establishment Clause and the First Amendment. It's not a violation of the First Amendment. It's not an unconstitutional establishment of religion to just simply allow a deliberative body to open up its sessions with a prayer that has been going on for centuries before the Constitution was ever drafted, let alone ratified. It does not violate the Constitution. And so I expect the court to see things that way.
And one last question for you. I think a lot of people who don't understand the legal process will look at something like this and they'll say, okay, the lemon test was thrown out. We've had all these religious liberty victories. Why do these battles still have to happen? Why is it that these injunctions aren't just thrown out automatically? Can you help people understand the process of why it requires continuing to go to court and challenging these things?
Well, it's an interesting case. There's a recent Supreme Court case where it struck down some states we could even throw you in jail, could convict you for a crime with less than a unanimous jury verdict. Like instead of 12-0, they could throw you in jail with a 10-2 jury verdict. Well, just because the Supreme Court changed the law does not mean that everyone who was in jail with a 10-2 verdict is now free. There still are processes to go to correct previous wrongs, and so that's what we are doing here.
Well, I appreciate that. And where can people go to get more information on this case as it unfolds?
Yeah, check out the Advocates website. We'll be covering this case on the Advocates for Faith and Freedom website, which I'm sure the link is there going to be in your show notes, and so they can follow the case there.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll have you back as there's new developments in this case. Thank you.
Thank you.